Welcome back to the Solid Verbal Boys and Girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt. That fine gentleman over there, you know who he is, Dan Rubenstein. Welcome back, sir. How are you?
Great, Ty. I'm great. This is the real off season that we are now entering. Yes, I don't know if there are any spring games left. Are there any stragglers, or was this the past draft spring game weekend, the last one we have?
I think there are a few out there still.
Okay, who do we have left of the biggies? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you have a schedule in front of you.
Yeah, I believe like Washington is one of those teams that's going to play its spring game on like a Friday night.
Okay.
This coming Friday night. So I think they're still out there. But otherwise, you're talking like Dartmouth and Indiana State.
Are we going live for a post-Dartmouth spring game reaction show?
We could if we really wanted, but that is not in the early content plan, no.
Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below. All I'm seeing is Washington of Power Conference schools.
That's right.
That's all that left. So a couple stragglers, but the overwhelming majority of schools have done their spring game, their spring showcase, whatever they want to call it. Okay.
So on today's episode, the plan is going to walk back through a couple of the spring games, just some things that jumped out at us as you and I went through and looked at recaps to see what beat writers, what fans were saying about their respective teams. We haven't talked a whole lot about that because we were preparing you for the draft, doing a bunch of other odds and ends around college football. There are also some news-ish items that I think, want to talk about today. What's going on in Colorado? Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Also, the transfer portal. Not a huge number of names in the portal that I think are going to move the needle, but some that are significant that you and I can go through. And then a bit of news from our friend Matt Brown over at the Extra Points newsletter regarding the upcoming EA Sports College Football 25 video game that I think could actually be a fun little game for us to play here.
And you just, by the way, you approved my request to buy a PlayStation 5?
I did.
On the company's dime?
It has been approved. Have you ordered it yet?
No, not yet.
I will order one and I can send it to you if that's what it takes.
And it's July? July is the release? Unspecified day in July is what
I believe the 19th is what we're shooting for.
July 19th.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good, man. I'm in.
Solidverbal@gmail.com, as always, is the email. Verballers.com is the Patreon for ad-free episodes, bonus episodes. Get all of these episodes a bit early here, especially in the off-season. Verballers.com if you are ever so inclined. If you are just finding us, or if you've been with us for a good long time now, I will reiterate what I've been saying the last few months. The most important thing you can do to support the show, Verballers.com aside, is to hit follow or subscribe wherever it is you are consuming this here podcast, be it Spotify, Apple, Overcast, Pocket Cast, whatever. Hit the follow, hit the subscribe button. Dan and I appreciate that more than we could put into words.
Definitely.
Shall we dive in?
Let's dance.
I don't feel like I can yell breaking news on any of this stuff.
Dateline, Eastern PA.
Is that a Stone Phillips? What was that?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good call. That's a good callback. I don't know. It's my like radio. What's like an old radio news? It's like a Reuters. Like, okay, here we are. Dateline, New Delhi. I don't know. Where we're just like, just business, ma'am.
Just business, man. All right. So, look, there's been some news around the Colorado program that I thought maybe we could bring up. I teased this a little bit on the episode we did last week or so, but Colorado, notably under Deion Sanders, notably with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, some big name talent.
Sure.
In Boulder.
In, out, all the same. Yeah.
But they are building that program differently, to say the least. Some of the news that I think was significant in our world is that Dylan Edwards, notably the running back last year who burst onto the scene, is now transferring out. There are other
Kansas State is what I think I saw, yeah.
Going to Kansas State, who was one of the teams that was in the running for him alongside Notre Dame before he eventually ended up at Colorado.
And he's local to Kansas, yes?
Local to Kansas.
Yeah.
Local to Kansas.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Good for him.
It makes sense. But this is kind of on the heels of also Cormani McClain, who said he wants to go somewhere where he's not playing for clicks. It seems as if this trend at Colorado to build through the portal is going to continue. Currently, if memory serves, they don't have anybody lined up for the 2025 class. They are definitely building this thing differently. Deion has been quoted as saying that they are trying to model their building strategy after the NFL and free agency, which makes it hard to develop players.
Sure.
Which is completely counter to what most every program around college football is doing. They don't even really have a balance in Boulder. It's just all portal all the time. They're trying to build their program in that manner. With respect to the speculation that maybe Deion would follow his sons into the NFL at some point.
Yeah,
Quote, I have work to do here. I absolutely love it here. It does not sound as if he is inclined to leave. So let's tackle this a little bit, Dan.
Well, first of all,
let's talk about Deion Sanders and what he's doing at Colorado and what the status is.
Was there actual speculation? I have no idea why we're leading off with Deion, but I obviously do know why we're leading off with Deion. Was there actual speculation? Like, man, the Steelers might hire Deion Sanders. Like,
that was my first question as well. I would say no, but who knows?
Okay. Yeah, look, this is happening to a number of programs, and what Colorado's doing is unique in one very specific direction with regard to relying on the portal and the overhauling of the roster, now including starters. Cormani McClain was a big deal as a recruit, but it appears the schools who were chasing him as a recruit aren't really chasing him as a transfer, reportedly. Like I saw, UCF was one of the finalists as the time we're recording this, and hope everything works out for Cormani McClain and he's able to flash the potential he did as a high schooler. It didn't work out at Colorado. So we'll see. Dylan Edwards, Kansas State, that could be a quite fun backfield with Avery Johnson. We'll see what happens when he was able to flash, and that's behind a not-so-good offensive line last year for Colorado. He was quite fun for the Buffs last year. So, look, say what you will about Deion Sanders, but he's not lying about his vision for roster construction.
No.
And so the Pitt defensive end is now the big name.
Dayan Hayes, yeah.
Dayan Hayes is the big name coming in, and we'll see that, they're getting visits from other spring portal guys. I question whether or not you can just sort of on the fly build a roster. And I know a lot of that is portal stuff, but that's portal stuff in January, December. That teams are adding a lot of players. They're going through winter workouts. They're going through spring practice and a spring game to gel with teammates, especially if they're on an offensive or defensive line. I just don't know if you can do this on the fly. Perhaps we'll be proven wrong with Colorado in the Big 12. They certainly have one of the better quarterbacks in the country, which is a great place to start. But the revolving door nature of it all, just, I don't know. It keeps me doubting.
Let me introduce a thought experiment.
Please.
Let me play devil's advocate.
Of course.
What has been the overwhelming response among folks like us, people who do podcasts, people who are in the actual mainstream media about college football? What has been the overwhelming response to this build strategy by Deion?
Doubt. I think.
Is there at all a chance that this is our version of, say, Moneyball? Is there, and what I mean by that is we have, I think for the last couple seasons now, heralded folks like, I'll throw Mike Norvell out there again. He's always my example for this.
Okay.
Coaches who do a good job balancing the high school with the portal recruiting.
Yeah.
Because you got to have both if you want to be successful in 2024.
Yeah, we're seeing with Ryan Day now, Dan Lanning the past couple years.
Sure.
Washington got over the top with portal recruiting. Sure.
There are a bunch of programs, coaches that we could throw out with respect to this. But
USC attempted with mixed results. Yeah.
USC attempted. Could it be that Deion has found something here? Could it be that being on the extreme portal side of recruiting is something that could work and influence others to go in that direction as well? Like, are we missing it because we are all filled with too much doubt?
I don't see it because of line play. I don't see it because, you play not that many offensive linemen, but generally successful teams are rotating in a lot of fresh legs along the defensive line. And so you need to build depth along the defensive line. If you're in a conference with a lot of quality passers, you need a deep secondary. And I think the teams that are savvy about the portal identify specific weaknesses in a unit and are able to plug in sometimes star power, depending on an NIL budget, But largely it's a depth play. That largely, like, we need better bodies rotating in as a 2 or 3. And there are teams that are successful in finding star power and can spend to back it up. But when you watch Colorado last year, which was basically Deion Sanders' team, that's his roster. He made a big deal about saying, I am bringing in my own guys.
Yep.
And so, you know, there's an argument among Colorado fans like, well, we went from 1-11 to 4-8 or whatever. I'm like, Deion Sanders built a 4-8 roster. This is not him playing with the 2022 roster. And so I think there are market efficiencies in the way that you have a vision for a program. Like, you're going to be super aggressive on 4th down, right? That teams are giving away yardage by punting no matter what because of like an old school way of thinking that it's 4th and 1 from midfield. We got to play field position here. And so in terms of moneyballing a football team, I think it's aggression. I think it's unique schemes that you bring in somebody like Northwestern did, right? Like, Northwestern's not going to have a roster, but we talked to Nate Tice. Like, he loves their very young, I think it's Peter Lujan, whatever his name is, from South Dakota State. And some like what James Franklin does as well, and bringing in Joe Moorhead. Like, I think that's the element where you're like, he's going outside the box in terms of how he's constructing a coaching staff and how he is looking at scheme. That, I think, is looking at market inefficiencies. But roster-wise, like, I think it's an experiment born out of hubris, I would say. I mean, not visiting schools, evaluation periods, not forging relationships with 25, 26 kids and their parents. Like, your zag of like, is he moneyballing this? I think is more out of, honestly, like, I'm so famous, I don't need to do this. I think it's out of hubris, not out of savviness.
Yeah, Zach Lujan, by the way, is the...
Excuse me, Zach, not Peter. Yeah.
Lujan, however you say it. Yeah, at Northwestern. I just think it's an interesting conversation to have because we have all gotten used to the method of building now. And we're not all used to the portal yet. I don't know if we'll ever truly get used to the portal, but it's here to stay. That combination of high school with portal recruiting seems to be the desired model. But Deion is obviously doing something a little different. I think what he needs more than anything is a really strong showing at the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Because very much what Deion is selling as for making Colorado a transfer destination is you come here, you're going to get exposure to the NFL in a way that you can't at other programs. He's got this big personality. Obviously, he's turned Colorado into, if nothing more, an interesting program. He needs to have some results with putting guys in the league. And I would say more immediately getting to a bowl game, winning games, not having a catastrophic defense or catastrophic line play. He needs to actually show some merit here. And until that happens, I'm going to remain somewhat skeptical that this model can work. But if, in fact, he starts putting guys in the league, like if Shador, I know it's his kid, but if Shador goes top 5 next year, suddenly there's a case to be made like, oh, you're a quarterback, come to Colorado.
Yeah. If
Travis Hunter goes top 5, which he'll go top 5, that furthers the case like, oh, you're a defensive back, you're a two-way player, come to Colorado, you can play for Deion. Like maybe Dayan Hayes in his time, in his transfer now from Pitt over to Colorado, playing under the tutelage of who? Warren Sapp? I don't know. Like maybe that
he's
will,
like an analyst or a,
maybe that will bear fruit. But he needs some guys like that he can add to his resume so that it helps recruit other guys to the program. But until that happens,
I was gonna say, Jordan Seaton's a big name, but like even you look at last year, like is there a single player who emerged as like a national or regional name other than Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders? Year one of Deion's specific
Edwards,
roster?
Dillon Edwards. I mean,
not really.
They've got some interesting recruits in the receiver room. And I like the receiver room. I still kind of feel the same about the lines for the most part. I don't know if there's been like a huge effort underway to improve that in a meaningful way. I mean, some of the names are okay, but I'm skeptical like everybody else. I just think it's an interesting conversation to have.
It's like a restaurant with really fun vibes that can't figure out how to make a taquito without it being frozen in the middle. I don't know. All right. What do we have next?
Elsewhere, in the portal, we mentioned Dylan Edwards. Just some names that are being bandied about, Dan. You mentioned Dylan Edwards going to Kansas State. Cormani McClain not seeing the same level of interest in his services now.
Talked about that. Yep.
Damian Martinez, much sought after running back from Oregon State, transferring out through his name in the spring portal. He is headed to Miami.
Yeah. Amid some accusations flying back and forth with the Oregon State, collective, that he was promised a certain amount of money, and I don't know. It seemed to get a little bit ugly, but yes, he has his new home running behind what should be a very, very good Miami offensive line. And look, talent's never really been a huge question. And if you talk to Miami fans, they'll say they finally have a roster, coupled with Cam Ward, that is much more in Mario's image when you combine now the transfers and guys he's recruited. But that's never really been the question. The question has been, right, scheme vision from Mario, and then situational awareness and preparedness with a fourth down offense, 4-minute offense, overtime plan. That's all the stuff.
Take a freaking knee. Take a knee, man.
When to take a knee, when to go for it on fourth down, what your fourth down playbook looks like, what your 2-minute offense looks like. And so, they can recruit like hell and populate the roster through the portal, and it's just going to be a September through December. All right, let's see what you do with it. That's the question still.
Jaden Rashada.
Yeah.
Going to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to play this year, barring injury, something goes wrong with Carson Beck. But Jaden Rashada going to Georgia, my guess is with an eye on winning that job next season. There's a little bit of surprise that they went out after Jaden Rashada. And
why?
I think from a fan's perspective, not so much from a Georgia perspective. But I think that raised some eyebrows when Jaden Rashada going to Georgia. I mean, he played last season as a freshman. Does he really want to take a back seat and kind of learn for a year under whoever is in charge? That being said, Dante Moore is essentially doing the same thing.
There's a certain blueprint to what he's doing, that he is going to get an in-earnest opportunity to sit, learn, be surrounded by talent, ensconce himself in it's a good word, right? $10 word, ensconce himself in a the top tier program in the sport, and then compete in earnest next year for the job, or leave again, right? You will have an opportunity to survey the landscape. And if anything happens unfortunate to Carson Beck this year, injury-wise, that there is some seasoning to Jaden Rashada as a starting college football quarterback. He got hurt early as a freshman, but this seems kind of like a no-brainer. They lose Brock Vandegrift. They have Dylan Raiola forever in the fold, and then he leaves. So I don't think they took a 2023, if memory serves. They didn't take a quarterback in a recent class. And so a little bit thin in terms of proven commodities at quarterback. And I don't know. I think it makes sense. Good for them.
I mean, it makes sense for them. Look, if you're Georgia.
Makes sense for him. Makes sense. Great.
Go out after the best guys you can get. Because your program has hit that critical mass where it can recruit pretty much anybody at once. So Jaden Rashada bounced around a bit, right? Was going to go to Florida,
Miami, Florida, ASU, and now Georgia. He's on tour. Yeah. Catch him in your town soon.
Tickets available on Live Nation, not a sponsor, could be. Also, Keandre Lambert-Smith, the former Penn State receiver, headed to Auburn.
Yes.
To bolster that receiver room. I am not a huge KLS fan after last season, but part of me also thinks that the situation at Penn State was more complicated than would meet the eye. It wasn't all on Drew Aller. It wasn't all on Mike Yursich. It wasn't all on the receivers, frankly. It was a combination of all three.
Everybody's incompetent. Continue.
Everybody struggled in some way, shape, or form on that Penn State offense a year ago. And so whether it was KLS or something else, I don't know. I think a fresh start for him is a good idea. It doesn't necessarily leave Penn State's receiver room in the best spot, although there were flashes in the spring game that people felt happier about.
He was counted on to be the number one guy coming in?
He was. Yeah, he was counted on to be the number one guy last season. And, he was, but it still was a season that I think was rather disappointing. And there's plenty of blame to go around in that regard. I think a fresh start for him is a good idea.
Okay, fair enough. Who was the receiver who transferred in from Kent State to Penn State?
Oh, we're talking a little Quintez
A couple
Cephas.
years. Yeah. Okay. So I just don't want to confuse two
Dante
different guys.
Cephas, excuse me.
Penn State's passing offense was a nightmare last year. It didn't seem like there were a bunch of cut-ups of him running wide open and being missed. And so, I don't know. I'm much more interested in, I think it's Cam Coleman, the freshman at Auburn, who flashed during the spring game, because it's been a minute since they've had a receiver that could really put the fear of God into anybody. And Cam Coleman, maybe not this year, but in the next couple of years, certainly could be that. So, I look good for Auburn if they can get it together in year 2, despite that coaching staff and the likability thereof. It would make the SEC a lot more fun.
The only other name I have here, and it's not as much portal, but it is a notable name moving from one place to another.
Yeah.
Brian Ferentz got a job, Dan.
Of course he did.
Brian Ferentz got a job with Maryland as an offensive analyst.
Okay.
I don't wish any ill will on Brian Ferentz.
Okay.
He may not have been the best offensive coordinator. I
Sure.
understand for the last few years running, he's been a bit of a punchline with all things offense and certainly Iowa football and its offense. But if he can go somewhere else and learn or do something different or just not be in charge of calling the plays, he was an offensive line coach for a while. I wish him well. I just, everybody in our circle of the world saw Brian Ferentz go to Maryland, and it was like a pseudo headline of sorts because he is on the move. He is going elsewhere. It just will not be with Iowa.
Yeah, he was not a good offensive coordinator for Iowa, but ultimately the legacy of the last at least 2-3 years of Iowa's offense is on his dad. And his dad is who put him in that position. His dad is who says, this is what I want our offense to be. This is what I want us to do on third downs. This is how often I want to pass it. This is what I want our passing game to look like. This is the types of players I want to recruit. And look, the father-son duo, Ferentz, the background is an offensive lineman. And as far as I could tell, these past couple of years, the offensive line has not been up to the standard that it was in recent years. And
That's
so
right.
We can say whatever we want about the play calling, but it seemed like, echoing what we said about Penn State, there was a lot wrong that wasn't just on Brian Ferentz.
And to that point,
Yeah.
I think we could probably take the bubble wrap off this concept now because it's going to be, people are going to hear it soon enough.
Sure.
We've got an upcoming project that you and I are working on
Correct.
detailing the state of the Iowa offense before, during, and after.
We do.
And
I'm very
I'm
excited
excited
for
about
this.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than what we normally do.
It's a nice little
But-
zag that we've got going. Yeah.
It's a little zag, and it's not a dunk. It is, in earnest, our curiosity hopefully on display. So
Yeah.
more to come on that front. Stay tuned. Any other transfer portal news that jumped out to you, Dan Rubenstein?
No, this is the sort of end of the window, and I don't think you can do a lot successfully this late in the process. I don't think there's going to be, huge names that we saw. Christian Miller from Georgia go in and come back out, a promising defensive lineman for the Dogs. Like, I don't know. I think it's the period of time where teams are like, oh, we have 89 scholarship dudes. We have to have a couple meetings here. Or the spring, like Oregon lost defensive lineman when it sort of became clear ahead of the spring game that maybe he wasn't super high on the depth chart. And so you're going to get a lot of guys like that. You're going to see a lot of tweets and Instagram posts where like, he was a 5-star coming out of high school. And you're like, okay, what about college? What about the college production? And so, yes, it's guys scrambling last second and it's teams scrambling to build up depth. But I don't think you're going to see a ton of star power this late.
Elsewhere around college football,
Yes.
we had 10 big-time power spring games this past weekend. Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
alongside Nebraska, Maryland, West Virginia, TCU, Colorado, Rutgers, UCLA, Wazoo, and Arizona. Let's talk about Oregon.
Okay.
I, on cursory glance, noted that people seem very high on the secondary at Oregon, that after years of it sort of being in question, it now may figure to be a strength. How did it look? Was that your takeaway from the spring game as well?
I only watched like a 10-minute highlight video and did some reading and saw some injuries. Oregon was out a big running back of theirs. They were without, specific to the secondary, guy who's penciled in as starter, Jaleel Florence, who has been hurt for quite some time now, I think recovering from some kind of procedure. So he wasn't there. They rotated in a bunch of guys, it seemed, in the secondary, young guys. Aaron Flowers was a big guy coming into this year's class, an early enrollee, and he made plays. Yeah, I think the secondary will be fine. They split up the team, so it wasn't like ones versus ones. It was thrown around. I think the only concern based on some of the results or some of the plays in the game would be offensive line a little bit, but they weren't playing as a number one unit. It was all broken up, and I think Oregon is pretty deep along the defensive line, and they really got the best of Oregon up front. Oregon on Oregon crime, I guess. No, they have a D2 transfer at running back who flashed a little bit, Jay Harris from Missouri somewhere. I think Oregon's in a really strong position. Dillon Gabriel was good, if not great. They had some drops. Evan Stewart had a crazy one-handed catch, but I think he was out of bounds and being interfered with. No, I don't take too much away. Jordan James looks very good. He looks like the best running back on the roster, and they're in a very good position. A lot of key names didn't play, but everything's good.
So this was the...
Man, Dillon Gabriel's short. I also took that away. He's a shorter guy.
Hey, as long as he throws touchdowns, it doesn't throw interceptions.
I think he'll be fine.
You'll take it. Dylan Raiola.
Ooh, man.
Dylan Raiola.
Yeah.
He might be it, man.
Oh, I think he is. I don't know what it means in terms of wins and losses, but...
He looked really good. He looked really good. Some of the recaps I read said as advertised. I saw some highlights. 16 of 22, 239 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, had a pick, had a long completion of like 64 yards as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a Nebraska fan, I understand the excitement around Dylan Raiola. And yeah, I guess on some level you have to trust that Matt Rule is going to put a better line out there. He's going to put a better offense out there this season, that the supporting cast around him, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is going to be much improved. Who knows what it means? Who knows if it means Nebraska's going to a bowl game, going to 8 wins?
Sure.
It's all too early for that. But in the limited glimpses that we got of Dylan Raiola, you got to be excited, man. Even like the backup, Heinrich Haberg,
yeah.
Even he looked better, more confident running the offense. There was a lot, I think, to take away from the Nebraska spring game. And so if you're a Nebraska fan, like, we're going to do this again. I feel like every year we're here with these Nebraska spring games and preseason thoughts where there is cause for optimism, but then we get to a point relatively early in the season where it sort of vanishes into thin air. Hopefully this isn't another year like that, but to start out here in April, Dylan Raiola looked pretty damn good. So good on him.
Yeah, all you want to see from a true freshman quarterback, especially one that you are hopeful is going to be the starter, which is rare. Like, if your team is in a position where they kind of have to start a true freshman quarterback, that's not the best position to be in. But with regard to Dylan Raiola specifically, the physical tools are crazy obvious. He looks like Patrick Mahomes in terms of his release and confidence and casual nature, and I say that in a good way, that he wasn't freaking out and having happy feet every play, displaying happy feet. The big thing you want to see is somebody not freaking out, somebody confident, somebody looking downfield and sort of being decisive that feels that it's within a rhythm of the offense. And that's what he looked like. And so I don't know how well the line will protect him. I don't know how well his receivers will get separation. I don't, they bring in, I think it's Dante Dowdell as one of the promising running backs, the Oregon transfer. He's a bigger back, and he had a long touchdown, I believe, in the spring game. But all you want from Raiola is confidence, decisiveness, not dirting balls in front of open tight ends or something, and the glaringly obvious reality that if he is surrounded by talent, that he can be a game changer, which I think you watch that game, you're like, yeah, it's there. Now the question is, like, who's protecting his blind side consistently? Yeah. Who is getting open downfield? Will he have enough time? If the offensive line isn't that good, how creative is the offensive coaching staff in terms of rollouts and misdirection and screen games, stuff like that? But, man, you watch him, and you're just like, oh, this is a different guy. This is a different guy. And that was on display.
Outside of the situation at Nebraska, I read through everything that took place this past weekend. I mean, you did a good job highlighting what went down at Oregon. Obviously, there were other games as well. Here were the three other interesting tidbits that I took away from this past weekend of spring football. The first is at Maryland. We talked about Maryland, Brian Ferentz. Okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
At Maryland, they don't know who's playing quarterback this year. And they still don't know who's playing quarterback after the spring game, right? So Talia, gone. It seems to be a two-way battle between Billy Edwards and MJ Morris. Neither one got a leg up in the quarterback race. It was, mostly speaking, a spring game that was led by defense. So if you like defense, good on you. If you're waiting for a quarterback to emerge, that did not happen yet. That's the first thing. Secondly, at TCU, Andy Avalos, now your boy.
My guy, yeah.
Now the defensive coordinator. Last year they ran a 3-3-5. This year, at least if
he
you're
runs a bunch of different stuff. He's pretty multiple, but yeah,
that's right. If you're taking anything away from spring, and we always expect these games to be somewhat vanilla, but we did see that the Avalos defense is much more varied. So a lot more 4-man rushes, many different looks from a defensive standpoint. I did not see in any recap, I was disappointed that he wants to run a more aggressive downhill attacking defense, but I think we know that's the case, and it's only a matter of time before we see somebody write that article. So we eagerly await that. Otherwise, a lot more man-to-man, things like that, I think were prominent on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, Sonny Dykes talked a little bit about how they're trying to incorporate more pre-snap motion.
Okay.
And they showed many different sets featuring one of those bunch formations for wide receivers. And it was so prevalent and so obvious that it was like one of at least one of those two things, the pre-snap motion or the bunch set on every single offensive drive. So if nothing more, if you take anything away from the spring game on the offensive side of the ball, never mind the names, it seems as if they're going to do more of that come this season, for whatever that's worth. That was pretty obvious. The other thing that was interesting on the UCLA front to me, Dan, I don't know if it was so much about the game as it was vibes. This was a vibes game for UCLA because Deshaun Foster, new coach, moved the spring game to the Rose Bowl. They had something close to 12,000 in attendance. I guess Ethan Garbers looked good, but across the board, the main thing that seemed to come through in most of the recaps that I read, even in some of the highlights that I watched, wasn't as much about the scrimmage as it was about just the vibes. Like moving it to the Rose Bowl, some of the players were commenting now it feels like LA is behind the Bruins again, whatever that means to you. They moved the game to the Rose Bowl, so that was fun in and of itself.
Okay. As for TCU, the defense is now obviously the last few days without Dominic. It's a Dominic, even though it's an A in the second. Dominic Williams, I think the defensive tackle. It looks like he's heading to Texas. I think. I don't think anything is official, but that's the word, and they're sort of thin in that department. The Longhorns are. Maryland, I have nothing to add, but they've been knocking on the door past couple of years with their games against not Penn State, but Michigan and Ohio State, and so. Hopefully it works out for them at quarterback and gets better along the lines because it seems like they're in a position to put, a lot of fear into the hearts of both Michigan and Ohio State.
So some other names here. We mentioned Dylan Raiola.
Yeah.
A couple of these other guys, but just some other names that popped across the board.
Please.
for West Virginia. Zay Jennings, is a freshman defensive back, an early enrollee who picked off a 2-point conversion, ran it the other way. He is a burner. And figures to play some role, as does maybe Clay Ash, who also is a freshman and showed some burst as both a runner and a pass catcher coming out of the backfield. So we'll be interested to see how or if those two guys are used.
You're saying early enrollee, but not a reclassifying, to be clear.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
On the Colorado front, they had their games in rain, terrible weather. But LeJonte Wester, the FAU transfer, was the go-to guy for some period of time for Shador.
Great.
And seemed to fit in pretty well with that receiver room, which is a pretty good receiver room.
Definitely.
So we'll see what kind of factor he plays this coming season. There is also a quarterback battle underway that I probably should have included in my 3 interesting things about spring. At Rutgers, it's Gavin Wimsatt and Ethan Kaliak-Manis.
Oh, man.
Freak.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting dynamic because Gavin Wimsatt's a runner. I mean, he's fine as a passer, but especially in the spring game, he showed his wheels and can run. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, much better as a passer. Which direction they end up going with this, I think, will be very interesting. Wimsatt was there last year, but Kaliak-Manis, the transfer from Minnesota, we'll see what he brings to bear.
What is your, by the way, just because you mentioned them, TCU-wise, I can't help but think the ceiling is lowering with each successive week, which it's like, I don't know. In terms of like what you're able to do after going to a national championship game, and then you're out a defensive coordinator, you lose key transfers. There isn't a lot of offensive pop last year. It's now, a Josh Hoover team?
Right.
Like, man, there seemed like there was a window to capitalize. They go, 5-7 last season?
It was a bad year.
And it's understandable, right? You have a lot of upperclassmen. Like, you catch magic, lightning in a bottle. You find that magic pixie dust with a lot of experienced players in your first year. I don't know, man. I think that window is like all but closed. And I like Andy Avalos as a defensive coordinator. I thought that was a pretty savvy hire.
I think that's a savvy hire.
But man, it feels like the juice is drained out of Fort Worth.
I'm not sold on Josh Hoover.
I think he's fine. I think all these guys are fine. But given those heights,
yeah. Fine is not what you're looking for as a follow-up act.
Right.
To making the national championship.
I mean, especially like whatever you want to say about Max Duggan's not an NFL quarterback, right? I think I have no idea. Maybe he is. But TCU had juice. Yeah. TCU had juice with him. End of games, like he was willing that team down the field. They were a really great story a couple of years ago, and it's amazing to see that sort of fade into the ether.
The only other guys that I'll call out here, since Wazoo, unfortunately, has been in this death spiral of getting all negative press by virtue of what went down with the Pac-12. Wayshawn Parker, freshman running back, looked really good.
Great.
Really explosive in the spring game. Their quarterback battle, can you name the two guys that are currently engaged in the Washington State quarterback battle? Without looking.
I cannot.
It is a fight to the death between John Mateer and Zevi Eckhouse.
Those are real names?
Those are real names.
Oh, okay. Well, may the best man win.
May the best man win.
Yeah.
That's all I got. That's all I got in the spring front.
Okay. Where are we going next?
We can go through and talk about other spring action as we get a little bit deeper into the month of May. But for now, if we're looking specifically at what transpired this past weekend, those are my takeaways.
Okay. Fair enough.
Our final bit here on today's episode comes via our good friend, Matt Brown, who is due for a repeat visit at some point soon. We tried to do it 2 weeks ago, had conflicting schedules. We're going to work that out to bring him back and talk through what's going on in college football. But there has been, as you might expect now, as we're about to turn the calendar into the month of May, a lot of speculation as to who is going to be on the cover of this damn video game. Video game isn't for everybody. If you're not into it, we understand. But this is a big deal. There hasn't been a game in a decade. Who are they going to put on the cover? Now, for those watching at home, I've got my copy of NCAA Football 14.
Which is worth $110 you can get for it on eBay? Something crazy?
I could get something for it, yeah, on eBay. Probably triple digits on eBay. Denard Robinson was on the cover of that.
Mm-hmm.
Deservingly so. Matt has been making calls and doing some reporting on who is going to be on the cover of this version. And I think it's really interesting, and I think we can play a little game here to wind down this episode.
Is it Kirk Herbstreit's dog? Is that where they landed?
They should put Herbie's.
We should have more of Kirk Herbstreit's dog. All the content should be never ending. Okay, continue.
Are you of the conspiratorial mindset that Kirk is showing his dog more because he's been catching flack from so many fan bases?
Oh, it's like a PR campaign?
This is some way to humanize him. The way they're doing with Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, frankly. Like, is this it? Are you of that conspiratorial mindset?
I'll be honest with you. I don't have an opinion of Kirk Herbstreit's dog, and I don't believe I will ever have an opinion. It seems like a dog. I like dogs. I like Kirk Herbstreit. That's my opinion of the whole thing.
I'm a big Ben fan.
I just all of a sudden, are you a golden retriever?
Golden retriever, yeah.
Okay.
He's got like 4 Goldens. I'm now a dog guy. I didn't think this would happen to me. But.
All I can tell is that dog lives a more luxurious life than I ever will, flying private across this great land.
Love it.
But that's that's neither here nor there. That was just the most random college football figure I could think of that could appear on the cover.
Here is what Matt reported via his Extra Points newsletter earlier today when he sent it out.
Yeah.
A few bullet points. I'm going to read these off verbatim. 1, there are multiple cover athletes since EA is releasing multiple versions of the video game.
What does that mean?
2,
multiple versions of the game.
I guess for different consoles, I guess maybe just they're going to release different covers. They've made the decision to release different covers. 2, each cover athlete is a current college football player who plays in a different power conference. There was plenty of internet speculation that the cover athlete could potentially be a coach like Nick Saban or any number of athletes that played during the years the games were not released.
Yeah.
I.e. previous Heisman winners, or even fans and mascots, i.e. the Oregon Duck.
Yeah.
Those were reasonable guesses, but I've been told, not me, this is Matt. Matt's been told that the athletes will be current athletes, people you will see play actual college football this season. Now here's the twist. Here's the twist, and here's where we're going to play a game. The athletes all play different positions, which means there will only be one quarterback, one running back, etc.
Got it.
So, multiple versions of the game, multiple covers. Each athlete is a current athlete who plays in a different power conference, and there's only one per position. So, Dan, if you are ever so inclined,
yeah,
would you like to have your cover athlete draft here to close out this
I would
episode?
love to. I also think, by the way, I don't know what the amount or the percentage ratio breakdown of people who buy the physical disc version versus buying the downloadable streaming version. And you just download it to a hard drive, right? Within the console.
Correct.
So technically speaking, the cover athlete takes on a different meaning because not everybody is going to have the physical disc and the physical packaging.
That's correct.
Do you know what the actual breakdown is? Like 70% do streaming?
I could not tell you.
Okay. Do you do streaming or do you have the physical copies when you buy games?
I have downloaded the digital version of pretty much every game I've gotten for the last at least 5 years.
So where does, like, who's on the cover of FIFA this year?
I think it's Mbappe.
Okay.
Kylian Mbappe.
So it's some huge name.
Yeah.
So if you have the streaming version, where does Mbappe, if it is Mbappe, appear? Like in the welcome screen or like the welcome
appears
menu?
in the welcome screen. The welcome screen, yeah.
So why couldn't we just pick our own? Like, why couldn't we actually pick our own instead of playing this game? Like, why can't I just put, like, Marcus Harper, who starts at left guard for Oregon, who's not at all famous, but like, hey, that's cool. I'm going to make like a hipster Oregon Duck choice. Like, why couldn't they just use some sort of AI tool to make it so anybody could be a cover?
Dude, this is way above my pay grade. I have no idea.
No, I need an answer from you specifically with bullet points as to why or why not. No.
I don't know.
Or like, why can't I put Trindon Holiday on the cover of NCAA or College Football 2025, 5'6" or whatever, Wunderkind or Deuce Vaughn, somebody like that's just like crazy likable from college football years of lore. I know I'm getting far afield of the point of this conversation, but I'm saying we should be able to pick our own.
Okay. Well, we can run that one up the chain and see if there are any options for you. But in the interim, Dan, we have a game afoot. The game is this. You got to pick 4 guys.
Okay.
4 guys for your 4 covers. We're going to assume there are 4 covers because there are 4 power conferences. You can pick a Notre Dame guy if you want to.
I think Notre Dame would be eligible in this situation.
Notre Dame would be eligible. And frankly, a Notre Dame guy for the ACC might be the only way to go. But you need one guy from the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC/Notre Dame.
Yeah.
All 4 of those guys need to play different positions. So here's why this is interesting.
And you tell me your reasoning going into it. Yeah.
Here's what makes this interesting. Because if you burn a position in, say, the SEC, you can't use that position in another conference. So I went back and forth on who do I want to use at quarterback? Because who you use at quarterback dictates who you're going to use everywhere else.
Right. So if you were to pick Shedeur Sanders, then the Big 12 is spoken for, and you can't pick another quarterback. Yeah.
I think if I am making my picks, the most obvious question to ask is, who is the biggest star? Who is the biggest, most marketable star going into 2024 college football? Is it Shedeur?
The biggest and most marketable star going into this season.
Who is that guy? I think it's Shedeur Sanders.
We're still at the tail end of players getting like 14 years of eligibility. So like DJU has been around for a while and he's at a big place, but I don't think he's considered to be a star, perhaps in the way that other players are.
No.
But his name has resonated and has been around at big places. Who is the biggest star this year? It's a power conference player at a major place. That's a household name. It could be Shedeur, sure.
Here are my picks, all right?
Quinn Ewers, I think, is up there, probably.
Quinn Ewers might be, but again, if I pick Shedeur, I can't pick Quinn Ewers in the SEC.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is just in terms of star power going into the 2024 season, you need somebody who's been around for a while, probably somebody who was a big-time recruit, and certainly somebody who is at a pretty major place that is getting network TV attention. So that's why Quinn Ewers is in that conversation.
My pick for the Big 12 is Shedeur Sanders.
Okay.
Shedeur is going on the cover. If I'm taking a quarterback there, I think that means I have to take other positions elsewhere. My pick in the SEC is Luther Burden.
Good pick.
Wide receiver.
Black and gold theme so far, yeah.
Black and gold theme. I would very much be inclined to go Carson Beck, to go Quinn Ewers. There are a number of guys you could justify picking in the SEC. But if I'm burning the quarterback on the Big 12, then I think we go Luther Burden in the SEC.
Okay.
Then that opens up the question of Big 10. Can't use quarterback, can't use wide receiver. I think you also have to go Michigan in the Big 10.
You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Ty.
This is my logic.
Okay.
Okay, I am trying to think like a marketing professional. I'm not a marketing professional. I'm doing my best. I think you got to go Michigan because Michigan has won the Big 10 each of the last 3 years, obviously reigning national champion. Far be it from me to not put a Michigan guy on the cover. I don't think you're putting Alex Orji on the cover, Dan. I just don't think you're doing it.
Right.
I think it comes down, well, I think it's got to be Donovan Edwards.
Okay.
I think I go Donovan Edwards as my Big 10 guy. Maybe a case be made for Will Johnson, but...
Or Mason Graham. And we're talking about a preseason All-American type player. Yeah.
I think I go Donovan Edwards.
I'm fine with that.
Where I struggle is in the ACC.
Okay.
Who is the most marketable player in the ACC that is not a quarterback, a running back, or a wide receiver?
What's his name? The end at Louisville? I mean, nobody knows his... I just literally punted on his name, but I know they have an end who had like 11 sacks last year. It's a good question.
Or do we go Notre Dame guy?
Here, I've got one. How about Ruben Bain at Miami? He completely dominated as a freshman. He's got an iconic uniform. He's got a great look. Big and strong. Looks like a superhero. I wouldn't hate that. Ruben Bain would be my pick in the ACC given your specific constraints with your picks.
Ruben Bain?
Do you hate that? I think Ruben Bain is becoming more and more a household name. He's the best player on what will be a good defense, I think.
I kept trying to think of who's the Florida State or Clemson player that we could put on this cover. Because Shedeur's got name brand power.
Right.
Luther Burden is probably going to be the top wide receiver in college football this year. Certainly in that conversation. Donovan Edwards, maybe the best offensive player for the reigning national champion. The ACC, though, the ACC is wide open.
Peter Woods is excellent for Clemson, but Peter Woods is a defensive tackle who is going to pop and be a huge pick, but he's not a national name as of this now. I think Ruben Bain, flashed more in terms of generating attention last year.
Would you like to make some picks?
I have different constraints. I actually have a rubric that I'm adhering to, unlike you, who's just like, who's the most famous? I think there's integrity here at play. I'm not picking a player whose team is new to a conference. Like, I don't think Colorado should represent the Big 12 before they play a Big 12 game if this game comes out July 19th.
They've played many Big 12 games, Dan.
This current, you know what I'm talking about. They're going back to it. If you want to put a Colorado player from 2006 on the cover, right? If you want to put Cordell Stewart on the cover, I'm fine with that. But no,
right.
Shedeur Sanders has never played a Big 12 game, so I don't think he deserves to represent the conference.
Okay.
So I would
Who are
say
your
Ollie
picks, then?
Gordon or Devin Neal to me. Did Ollie Gordon lead the nation in rushing last year?
I believe so. Ollie Gordon's a fantastic pick. He's also, I believe, one of the EA Sports preferred athletes. Remember, we talked about that in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
I did think about maybe going Ollie Gordon in the Big 12, but
Iconic uniform. Having Pistol
Iconic
Pete on
uniform.
the cover of a video game would be great.
the problem with going Ollie Gordon in the Big 12 is you can't go Shedeur and you can't go Travis Hunter.
So
You're not going to get either of those guys on the
neither
cover.
has played a Big 12 game.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I think there's integrity to this selection. That's all
Dan
I'm saying.
Rubrickstein.
Like, I
his
won't take an
magic.
Oregon player to represent the Big Ten.
Okay.
I won't take a Cal player like you're desperate to do to represent the ACC.
All right. Who are you taking in the SEC then?
I think Luther Burden is a really good choice.
Yeah.
There are great players in the SEC. Like, I would consider...
There's a bunch of quarterbacks in the SEC, though. If you don't go quarterback in the SEC, you're going a quarterback in either the Big Ten or the ACC.
Which quarterback would you take in the SEC?
Probably Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers, one or the other.
I would take Quinn Ewers because that violates my rule.
So then I would probably go Carson Beck.
I think Carson Beck is a good choice. There is something about Georgia being better defined by its defense lately that would have me lean like Malachi Starks or Nazir Stackhouse or Mikhail Williams, guys like that.
Look, Dan, look at the cover I'm holding up.
I understand. I
This is
understand what the
Denard
point of the game is.
Denard Robinson captured
All-timer.
every college football fan's attention
I know.
when he was playing. So, with all due respect to Nazir Stackhouse,
I know.
no, he's not getting a cover.
Okay. Okay. I think Luther Burden's a really good choice, but the problem is, I don't know, you have all these brands in the SEC that you do want to represent something bigger. Like, honestly, in terms of star power, in terms of a uniform that I'd love to see on the cover, I might go Harry Purkey for the SEC. It's a pretty good choice, right?
I thought about Harry Purkey. I did think about Harold
I'll
Perkins.
go Harold Perkins. I think that's fun and defining of the SEC. Now, last year was a little bit disappointing, but even still. So if I go Harold Perkins, Ollie Gordon for running back and defensive player.
You can really open up the playbook here.
So I've got quarterback and receiver for ACC and Big Ten.
Yep.
I was disappointed that it's only power conferences because I kind of want to see Ashton Ginty bowling ball with razor blades on the cover, but that's me personally. Quarterback in the Big Ten, there's not really a good answer here to me.
Dillon Gabriel, man. Dillon Gabriel, it's right there for you.
That goes against my rule. New Big Ten team.
You're not going to put Drew Aller on the cover, are you?
I don't think I can put Drew Aller.
You can't put
I don't
Drew
think
Aller.
Alex Orgy. By the way, neither Alex Orgy nor Will Howard have started games for their respective teams, so I'm also keeping transfers off because I don't think you should represent your team for the first time on the cover of a video game.
Okay.
It should be the classic way, which is beating up on UT Chattanooga or something.
Okay. All right. So you're really limiting yourself.
I am limiting myself.
What other star quarterbacks are there in the Big Ten outside of...
It doesn't have to be Big Ten.
You put Miller Moss on your cover?
This is the king of all video games, so why not put Haynes King on the cover of College Football 25?
We're putting Haynes King on for the ACC. Oh, my God.
It's real. No, I'm not putting Miller Moss. Again, new quarterback to the conference. Now, hasn't started a regular season game for his team.
Okay.
So, oh, man. If you really want to go for it.
Maybe the most powerful conference, and you can't think of a name.
The Big Ten? Well, can I select a defensive player who isn't a defensive lineman?
You pick whatever you want. Just don't pick running back or like an edge rusher. Whatever Harold Perkins.
All right, then I'll go with like Will Johnson, Michigan.
Okay, I like that.
I'll go with Will Johnson to represent because Caleb Downs might be the best defensive player in the conference. It would either be like, if I can't do edge rusher, then I can't do like Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimalu.
Right.
So, and I'm not doing Caleb Downs because he hasn't played it down for Ohio State yet. So, Denzel Burke is up there. Like they're really good answers all around. Will Johnson for Michigan. Harold Perkins, LSU, Ollie Gordon. And so in the ACC, I can select who? Receiver or quarterback.
Yeah.
God, I got to remind myself.
Go a little Cade Klubnik.
I don't think I can do Cade Klubnik.
Could go DJU. I know he's a transfer.
Hasn't played a game for Florida State yet.
But he's kind of like the elder statesman. Him and Dillon Gabriel this year of college football.
And I said Ruben Bain for you in the ACC.
Do you want to go Riley Leonard?
I'm looking through ACC quarterbacks in this moment, or ACC receivers.
It's a little rough. You want to go Kyron Drones?
I would like Kyron Drones.
I'd put Kyron Drones on a cover.
That would be fun for me. But this is like I'm going against what EA wants to do in terms of marketability of
Cam Ward,
famous players. Hasn't played it down for Miami.
Okay.
Like Xavier Restrepo for Miami.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you're reaching a little bit in the ACC's tougher.
Just do Riley Leonard, man.
I would do. You know what I would do? Because I'm saying that Miami has like the iconic uniform and the iconic look, I would represent Miami in what their identity is right now. How about, was it Francis Mauigoa, the starting right tackle?
You are not taking this game seriously.
Don't laugh.
Dan Rubenstein.
I think football is just more than just quarterbacks. You're fancy boys.
You're not going to put any quarterbacks on. All right. What's his? I can't even spell that.
Isn't it Francis Mauigoa? Isn't that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. Francis.
For Miami? Come on. He's a star. Yeah, Francis Mauigoa.
God.
Offensive lineman. They'll never do that.
This is terrible.
But like the problem though is with my specific rubric, I'm taking Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, USC, all these teams out of it.
I know.
Big 12 teams. Like Cam Rising would look great on the cover, but Utah hasn't played a Big 12 game.
I don't have an ACC player. I failed the assignment. I legitimately
I gave you
don't
two
have.
really good Miami Hurricanes in Mauigoa and Ruben Bain.
They're going to put Ruben Bain on the cover.
Why not?
Of this. They're not.
I'm telling you. Look, the best. You wouldn't even mention maybe the best player in the SEC as a cover athlete, but his name is James Pierce, I think, for Tennessee.
Yeah, for Tennessee edge rusher.
Tore it up. Could be like the number 3 pick in next year's draft.
Could be the number 1 pick next year.
Could be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
If you're going purely, but
God.
I know. I'm very tedious, Ty. I'm very tedious.
Right. I failed my own assignment. I don't have a good name for the ACC.
So what position for you in the ACC? You could go defense or...
I've got quarterback, I've got running back, I've got wide receiver. I can go anything else in the ACC.
You said quarterback, running back, receiver?
No.
Okay. Well, I think there's good defensive players in the ACC. I think Ruben Bain is the answer there.
I'll put Ruben Bain on my list, okay? I'll put him on my list. I think it's a horrible selection.
Why?
I think it's a horrible pick.
I'm looking, by the way.
I'm looking for marketability in the ACC.
Miami defense.
No. Come on.
No?
No.
What about, okay. Man. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. It's Ashton Gillott, by the way. I think it's how you pronounce it. Yeah, for Louisville. But yeah, I think Ruben Bain's a bigger name.
Write in solidverbal@gmail.com.
This is the most pro-Miami I've ever been on this show since Mario Cristobal took over.
What the hell is going on here, man?
Yeah.
Gosh. All right. Write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know who would be your fearsome foursome.
Now, sort of to play devil's advocate to my own rules, what's more representative about college football in 2024 and 2025 than transfers and realignment?
The transfer portal.
Well, I'm saying realignment, like Utah, Big 12, whatever, and portal guys.
Right.
So Dillon Gabriel on Oregon, or Grayson McCall at NC State, or any of those names, Will Howard at Ohio State. Like all of those names actually make sense on a certain level because it is representative of the times.
No, I think that's absolutely the case.
But I just believe in a little stickiness to these programs representing conferences and players representing programs. That's all.
Maybe I'll go like Ben Morrison or Xavier Watts for Notre Dame for my ACC. I'll go Xavier Watts. How about that?
I have no who is the most famous Notre Dame player right now who has played for Notre Dame?
Who has played for Notre Dame?
Yeah, because not Riley Leonard.
Probably
Who's the most famous? Is it Howie Cross?
Howard Cross the third is pretty good. He's up there.
You know what? Let's see, like CJ Carr hasn't played for him.
CJ Carr hasn't played. I mean, Xavier Watts was incredible.
Yeah.
And so I think
I think it's actually Howard Cross that has played for them.
Ben Morrison has been really solid.
What'd you call him last year? Benjamin Harrison, our former president?
Benjamin Harrison. Yeah, former president. I don't know. Man, what a game. solidverbal@gmail.com. Write in, send in your suggestions here. We added some perhaps unnecessary rules to this game.
Oh, I definitely did.
Would very much welcome anyone's feedback across email or any of our social channels.
Who's Penn State's most famous player? Is it Aller? Abdul Carter, maybe?
Well, I think Abdul Carter is probably the best.
Pound for pound, the best player on the team? Yeah.
Either him or Nick Singleton. But Aller's got the name. So
yeah, I would think Abdul Carter is the best representative right now of Penn State football. Yeah.
All right, that does it.
Yep.
Hopefully some news you can use here on today's episode. As we push forward into the month of May, we have all sorts of fun concepts lined up for you to hopefully get things rolling, man. Once we get into the latter half of May, things start rolling downhill.
Yeah.
Season gets awfully big in the window. I have not updated my official day counter to see where things stand, how soon college football will be back among us. But needless to say, it's getting a little bit bigger in the window now that we've turned the corner on the NFL draft and spring football. The month of May is always a weird time, but as we get into June, that's when things really start to churn. So keep it right here. Hit follow or subscribe wherever it is you're listening to this podcast. We'd appreciate it. Verballers.com, of course, is our Patreon. You get access to episodes a little bit early without the ads, bonus features at your disposal as well, Dan Rubenstein. That is all I got.
All I've been doing is picturing Trindon Holiday as a cover athlete since we began this conversation. How glorious that would be.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, from myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks for downloading, for listening, for supporting what we do. We will talk to you all on Thursday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.